rezago de más de 2 décadas en el mundo laboral. Que el cierre de brechas que se previó que podía tardar 100 años en cerrarse, ahora se habla de 135 años para cerrar la brecha entre los hombres y las mujeres. Entonces nuestro objetivo es que miren el derecho de las mujeres al empoderamiento económico, que el statement quédate en casa, que es un viejo conocido del patriarcado, no sea que nos quedemos en casa siempre, y que entendamos que la inserción de la mitad de la población, de este talento humano que tiene una serie de ventajas competitivas, es necesario para el crecimiento económico. De manera que la CIM está colocando esta realidad, está colocando las necesidades de las mujeres, le está haciendo unas recomendaciones de rutas para poder cumplir con el derecho al empoderamiento económico y con el crecimiento económico que requieren nuestras empobrecidas economías en tiempos de COVID.
Esta organización es el guardián regional en defensa de la democracia, la libertad y los derechos humanos. Los países se han comprometido con estos valores a través de instrumentos legales como la Carta Democrática Interamericana, la Convención Americana de Derechos Humanos y todas las demás convenciones interamericanas. Nuestro trabajo es mantener los más altos estándares. Debemos ser objetivos, analizar los hechos, denunciar cuando veamos corrupción, inequidad o amenazas a la libertad. En esos casos no podemos ser neutrales.
More than 100 years since the inauguration of this building, the OAS headquarters, our institution still brings together the peoples of the Americas to address our responsibilities as a partnership of nations. As we look to the future, our work must also focus on the construction of a positive agenda that continues to favorably impact millions of lives every day.
COVID-19 pandemic brought unprecedented challenges to all member states and the people we serve. In response, the OAS Secretariat for Integral Development adopted a three-pronged approach by 1. Adjusting our portfolio of existing projects, 2. Exploring new projects to meet emerging needs, and 3. Expanding multi-sectoral partnerships. The results achieved in 2020 demonstrate the resilience of our member states and the commitment of the OAS SETI to work with member states and partners towards our common goals in the development of our region. Our Network on Competitiveness launched the COVID-19 Ideas Accelerator, sharing 250 tools, health solutions, responses, and recovery plans. The Network for Labor Administration published a portfolio of responses from ministries of labor to COVID-19, sharing over 420 measures taken to protect workers, employment, and income. Likewise, the Inter-American Teacher Education Network series, Teaching STEM in Quarantine, provided 117,000 teachers with key tools to continue advancing STEM education during the pandemic. Through its network and platforms, the Inter-American Committee on Ports promoted international and national best practices, guidelines, protocols, and recommendations on COVID-19 safety measures and continuity of logistic operations. Initiatives such as the Education in Times of Change platform allowed us to meet urgent needs by offering timely tools on virtual education and a dedicated space for ministries to share strategies, actions, and solutions. Other programs such as the Row Fund stepped up, providing emergency grants to offset the challenges imposed on our students by the pandemic. SETI's partnerships are adding value to member states in the form of technical assistance, training, and access to tools and services. In partnership with leading private sector institutions, we offered micro, small, and medium enterprises access to online tools and training, increasing their visibility and participation in e-commerce, a key to their survival and growth in the pandemic and post-pandemic era. A new OAS SETI Facebook initiative provided 85,000 MSMEs across the region with capacity building opportunities and WhatsApp business tools to aid response, recovery, and resilience building. The Caribbean Small Business Development Centers program achieved real impact, supporting new businesses, expanding sales, and driving growth. A new network of Caribbean SBDCs will broaden the program's reach. The Inter-American Committee on Tourism, the C2, convened ministerial-level policy dialogue in an urgent response to the impact of the pandemic on the hard-hit tourism and hospitality sectors. Policymakers and experts discussed biosanitary protocols, travel and visa facilitation, among other critical areas for the sector's recovery. Partnering with the George Washington University and the U.S. Bureau of Indian Affairs, we went ahead with the scheduled first Indigenous Tourism Forum of the Americas, pivoting to a virtual format and convening over 240 participants from indigenous communities, the private sector, and governments. SETI also integrated sustainable development practices in the COVID-19 response. The pandemic is a daily reminder of the links between water, health, sanitation, food security, and nutrition. We ensured the continuity of our water management projects in the Plata Basin and worked with governments and partners in the design of an investment portfolio valued at $90 million. Additionally, the Energy and Climate Partnership of the Americas continued to share relevant best practices and responses to the pandemic on energy and air quality. These few examples indicate our collective impact. We cannot do this alone. It is now more urgent than ever to address the region's structural weaknesses, to recover from the health, economic, and social crises occasioned by the pandemic and prepare for future shocks. It is imperative that we work together as we risk losing recent development gains and seeing millions fall back into poverty. It is time for the region to redirect course and pursue a more sustainable, resilient, and equitable future for all. We are in this together.
But the resilience building agenda is too big for any one stakeholder to address acting alone, and simply bringing together stakeholders, whether at the national, subnational, regional, or global level, is not enough. Effective, focused, and sustained coordination among stakeholders is paramount to provide countries with integrated and comprehensive support.
The OAS, as a hemispheric forum and honest broker, must continue to facilitate this process while we work with member states towards the attainment of the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. Cooperation, collaboration, and partnerships that include all actors strengthen us, enabling us to be more than the sum of our parts. We can and we must work together. The future of our region depends on it.
Me and my kids have been there for over an year right now. And children are friends. It doesn't matter where they come from.
Proceed.
Yes, President, we have quorum.
Thank you. Good afternoon, colleagues. The time is 1:34, and we will be resuming this afternoon's session. As we begin the session, the continuation of our third plenary session, I would like to welcome the Vice Minister of Ecuador, the Vice Minister of Education in Ecuador, Ms. Cynthia Game, who will be sharing with us exchanges and thoughts on the return to in-person education that aims to encourage a safe and open exchange on successful experiences or challenges associated with current strategies for the return to in-person education in schools in the countries of the region. Ms. Game, if you are here, I would now invite you to take the floor for your presentation.
Viceministra, si puede solicitar la palabra.
Ask the floor, please.
President, we have the Vice Minister connected. We are only waiting for her to request the floor.
Hello?
She did request the floor, sorry. It's taken some time for her to access the window.
Hello, are you hearing me?
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Chair, sorry. Ms. Game requested the floor. The floor was given. Oh, we lost the chair, Director.
Sí, esperemos unos minutos a que lo...
Let us wait a few minutes for her to reconnect. Vice Minister Gaines was given the floor, but she hasn't connected yet.
Señor director, se volvió a dar la palabra al Ecuador, pero ahí está el presidente.
Ecuador has given the floor again, but still nothing happened.
Just now, sorry, I'm back. Please accept my apologies. Is the Vice Minister of Ecuador, the Vice Minister of Education of Ecuador online?
She's connecting, President.
Okay, so we'll just give her a minute or two.
Yes.
While she connects.
Ministro, están revisando la conexión de la viceministra.
Checking the connection because she doesn't appear on the screen. So it seems that we have given her the floor, but we cannot see her, and the technical team is getting in touch with her to see what's wrong.
If we're having some difficulties with Vice Minister Gain, is it possible that we could go to the next presentation by Deputy Director Molina? Is Deputy Director on the call in the meeting?
Déjeme lo verifico. Let me verify that because she was... Just give us a second.
Mr. Chair, Deputy Director Molina is requesting the floor.
Thank you. I'd like to begin by thanking Deputy Director Molina for accommodating us at this point in time. We know it was not your scheduled time to speak, but the fact that you have been so accommodating, I believe I can be a little bit accommodating to you as it relates to time as well, should you need a few extra minutes. I'll turn the floor over to you, Deputy Director.
Doctora Molina, su micrófono y su cámara. Gracias. Micrófono.
Vale, muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. I extend a kind greeting, and we are going to share the presentation once again, and they were going to share from the ministry my presentation now. First of all, I want to tell you that we are going to share with all of you basically, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Dr. Molina. We are waiting for you to request the floor. Once she is on the screen, she will be able to share the presentation. Because, you know, in all these present meetings, time is gold. So I am going to show you the presentation that we are going to share with all of you. What was the space, virtual space of dialogue and exchange of experiences that we had in the ordinary meeting from the 22nd and 29th of July this year. That was an extremely pleasant opportunity for us as a country, and it was an extremely interesting experience and exercise. We insisted that we shared our experience and our understanding based on this Ministry of Education that we have, and our interest in the quality, and our ministry from Colombia. We interested in the quality and the conditions for the development of human development of all the children and adolescents and all of those that have, and the ones that have disabilities, and of the placement and any other type of characteristics in their lives. Our strong strengths and spaces for the development and to protect the children and all of them, and the children of both genders. This means that we started from the acknowledgement of the diversity that exists in our territory, and the acknowledgement, obviously, that there are different types and rhythms of learning and understanding of the education.
Debemos plantearnos
Quality of education we talk about of all the territory that covers all these particularities, and this reflects that it is very flexible, it is timely, it is dynamic, and that it talks about understanding and of following, and that it takes into account all the matters that cover the needs of our children. As I was telling you, this was an interchange and a fabulous dialogue that we presented jointly with the OAS and the agenda, the structure of our agenda. And this is one of the things that we consider that is extremely important, and to repeat that it is a task that was cooperative and the joint task and effort, and the importance that we had of sharing and jointly learn with all the other countries of the region. What we basically agreed to have a work on equity that can be developed, aspects that were very important for all the countries. And we therefore decided to work the first axis, and that we have the norms on developing in our country. The second axis are the tools that we developed for support the education and including and the connectivity for all the students, and then to share the experiences and giving the opportunity to all the children. It is important to insist in the diversity that we have in Colombia at the ethnic, cultural, and geographical, and obviously to respond to the different conditions that exist in our country. When we started with the first stage of our work throughout the different regions, we've had a first session. And then the first thing that we did was to share how we are understanding that Colombia and the education on the basis and preparing and sharing with the other countries how we are establishing the education, not only to talking about the children and the adults and the adolescents, but the system that we are going to implement, but all of those and their singularities. When we talk about their education and diversity, we talk about students as well as of people, and that can be included in a situation of responsibility on the students that can in migrant students that can be we have some difficulties or of behavior or of poverty, or we can talk about an education that can be inclusive for them. And in this respect, during the first stage, we shared with the ministry as with the different type of countries as well as equity, and we considered to make something specific in the rural sector, and with these observations that we made to make the gradual return and safe return of all our students to the educational system. At the first stage and the second stage was as an interchange with all the countries, and Peru, we could exchange, and Mexico, and to study the expectations and all the matters related of the situations that exist in all these countries. And finally, we decided with all the conclusions that we arrived, how we could follow on these steps. In the second sessions, the 29th of July onwards, we decided that in a pluralistic manner, because we decided with the OAS and CIDE and the other countries with which we had been working. What we did then in a second meeting was to share the experiences on equity. And the first stage from Colombia, we shared 4 experiences that were covered in these conceptions on equity, equality, and regarding the attention on regarding the capacities, capacity building, and the experience regarding the educational attention given in the rural section, and the children that also had some we managed to in a very conclusive manner cover and scheme in order to conclude all the experiences that would allow us to make a successful interchange and exchange, and it was fabulous really, because we were able to make a systematic manner of this exchange, and that we covered partnership among the countries. From there onwards, we had a second meeting and we covered and exchanged the results at the municipal levels, and we obviously managed to arrive to final decisions of how we could cover jointly with the OAS some final decisions following. Then, as I told you, as a product, as a final decision of this, with the interchange of experiences and the task carried out with the cooperation with the member countries, we prepared here and we managed to support the consolidation of this fabulous document that covered a virtual dialogue of all the experiences that shows in a very general manner what we you cannot obviously read because the letter is too small, but it is like a literature with the OAS and the CIE, which is a summary of all the report of what we manage, of which were the results that we obtained with the experiences, which are the differential matters and the tools that were what are the conclusions and which are the pact that we are going to follow. And they are very interesting, and all the terms of to continue as countries, to continue contributing in order to give all the children of the region and adolescents, so that we may follow the development and they can cover all these results, and we may obviously obtain and improve the conditions so that each one of them may have a better result, and that might construct a better capacity and they may obtain better results. Here it is obviously a challenge, and we continue progressing, and we are going to have spaces of work, and we are certainly going to continue sharing, and we are going to continue working. Another topic that is extremely important when we are talking about quality and continuity, and we are reviewing also if we can also continue other aspects on the styles of healthy life, and you can see that we are going to progress and we are going to continue sharing experiences and in a general way creating more spaces that we might share. I want to say here that we is a slide that we want to share, that we managed to do a joint work of cooperation and technical practical results, and it is possible that the countries manage to share and to enrich our experiences, and we manage to overcome our challenges and arrive to positive results for our countries, and something that is very important to continue working in this space. That is for the work that we have done in each one of our countries to plate the attention and the care and the stamps of all the actions that we give for the children and the development for them in This is the presentation that we prepared from Colombia jointly with all the countries in the region, and I hope that it is sufficiently clear for all of you and the important impact that this has for the work that all the countries that have shared these experiences, and that it can always also be an important important in the framework that we have used. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Deputy Director. I know we had a few technical issues, but notwithstanding, your presentation has been well received. And I would like to now open the floor for any intervention that any delegate would like to have. I'm currently not seeing any requests for the floor. If there are none, I'd like to once again thank you, Deputy Director, and ask that if Vice Minister...
Minister,
yes.
Mexico is requesting the floor.
Oh, thank you. Mexico, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for giving us the floor. I am a member of the Mexican delegation. I would take the floor just for a very brief intervention after hearing the presentation of Colombia. First of all, I want to thank Colombia for the presentation of their experience in this activity. Mexico participated in this dialogue, and it was extremely enriching. Mexico participated through the superior, and it was very important, and it participated and knows very well the experience of all the other countries. In these two ideas, I want to share with you very briefly what we found through the inclusive experience and the connectivity, and to express our interest to continue with the strengthening of the countries. The Secretariat of the Public Education for the populations in conditions that leave their education system vulnerable, and the practice and the opportunities of the social conditions and the dialogue, and so that the Mexican states wants to change this and to ensure the permanent access to the education to all peoples. Under these conditions, the Secretariat created a system, the implementation that has as the objective to proactively change the system in an instructive manner, pertinent, responsive, that will identify and cover all the participation, and that will presented in all the, and to favor the access all the time and the participation and conclusion of the children, adolescents and youngsters in all the country, and the diversity in the same conditions and opportunities, with the public educations as well as specific conditions and work.
We have a technical
Yes,
problem.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
And her image froze, so it could be connectivity.
Yeah. Okay. In the interim, while we try to have that resolved, do we have any other delegation that wishes to make a contribution to the discussion? I am currently not seeing any hands raised. And so if not, I would like to thank Deputy Director Molina for your presentation. Very informative, very well received. Thank you very much, Deputy Director. And if we can now revert to our previous speaker, Vice Minister Game from Ecuador. Is she on the call? Yes, there you are. Vice Minister, I turn the floor over to you. Thank you, Deputy Director.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon to everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, greetings from the Galapagos Islands, where I'm learning about the application of the contextualized curriculum to this wonderful territory, which is so beautiful. In my presentation, I'm gonna review the actions implemented by the Ministry of Education of Ecuador since March of 2020 that it has been implementing it to date, and how these actions have brought us to our present situation days before we're going to go back to in-person classes. Thank you for the introduction. Please help me with put up the slide presentation at this time. Thank you very much. Educational continuity in pandemic. Ecuador declared on March 11, 2020, the health emergency. Students attended their classes the last day on Thursday, March 12th. That was the last day they went to class, and then the national authorities promote digital platforms from that point on for education. The ministry put together the COVID-19 education plan and implemented phase 1, Let's Learn at Home, Aprendemos Juntos en Casa, the goal of which was for the students to continue with their learning activities from their respective homes. Next slide. Phase 1, Let's Learn Together at Home, Aprendemos Juntos en Casa, issued guidelines with regard to prioritize curriculum and several didactic focuses using active methodologies in which the teachers have to work together to apply educational resources, along with pedagogic and psycho-emotional support, as well as you see on this slide. There was digital literacy programs were implemented. The students, even families, to solidify distance learning were given this training. In difficult areas for internet access, we had programs and used different media and platforms. For example, radio, television, printed material distribution. We use a telephone platform, cell phone platform. So as you can see on the slide, students had available to them a lot of different forms of support in their learning: audiovisual support, digital support, support of their teachers, and a repository of digital resources as well. On the next slide, we see that these resources, these audiovisual and digital resources, helped strengthen a lot education because they were free of charge and open to all. So we saw how they could be shared freely and provided free access to these materials. Everything was readily accessible and enabled everyone to use and reuse, change, and create new education materials. Educativo is the name from 30 to 90 minutes a day is what the instruction time on radio, television, and digital means were used. The repository of educational resources, which is on the right side of this slide, was enabled on the ministry's webpage. It continues to be where we load all the documents, books, guidebooks, instructions, guidelines, to be downloaded and to be viewed by students, teachers, and families alike. Among different types of content we've seen, we can see protocols and guidelines to confront the socio-emotional consequences of the pandemic, and even grievance management for students and family. And the next slide, phase 2, to get of let we learn together, we take care of each other. We see this second phase. It's a voluntary and progressive approach. Under all proper rules, we try to continue with education and progressively use school facilities more and more. So little by little, our children went back and adolescents went back to school after a year of lockdown. So we created safety protocols for this. The PICES, P-I-C-Es as they are known, is the institutional plan of educational continuity, which has 2 major components to it. The first one is to be able to distribute semi-in-person learning used under different strategies as a requirement for the institution to offer in-person or semi-in-person mode of learning. These activities were prioritized to lead to all in-person, but taking into account biosafety. And so a diagnostic assessment was made of the students once, and they're using an app called System of Monitoring and Follow-up, PICE, of the Ministry of Education. What were the results of these institutional plans, these PICEs, as they're known? So we've seen that this instrument allowed the national education system to begin return to in-person learning and to achieve overall results as of October 11, 8,268 plans, PICE plans were approved. That's 50.7% of the education institutions nationally had implemented these plans, a PICE plan, and returned to in-person. That's more than 708,000 plus students, and some 4,000 plus teachers were back to school as of November 11th, 2021. So we can see a detailed report here of one of these PICE plans, institutional plans. We can see records of COVID infections, etc. We see reported 33 students and 7 teachers became infected. So this means that there was not major infection within each facility, education, besides the use of masks, social distancing, hand hygiene, and isolation were properly followed, these guidelines, and that's what led to these figures. These figures you see, once again, on a weekly basis, they're monitored from the decentralized points of oversight. In the next slide, we see supplementary or parallel strategies for progressive return to in-person. There are 2 complementary strategies we followed. re-encounter point and is one, and so the results of these reunification points, these were safe spaces that brought in children and adolescents to take part in a national census on physical, mental health and their progress in their education. And August 10th of this year is when this was carried out. Until October 10th, they were conducted. In 2081,000 plus national points nationwide were set up. 281,199 students actually went and took part in these meeting points to undergo this assessment. So we also created a plan called Learn on Time. This national plan is an affirmative action plan designed specifically for students who have had poor performance, academic performance. These low levels of learning were focused on language, literature, and mathematics. As a result of the pandemic, they got worse. So this plan has an ongoing, permanent process of prioritize and focus curriculum in different areas of communication, mathematics, and individual help by a tutor. These actions helps to bring the students safely back to in-person learning and bring them up to speed. The return to in-person learning, thanks to the successful national vaccination plan, this week we achieved government approval for a return that is safe and responsible. This path that we have underwent, beginning with distance learning through different means, such as semi in-person, alternating in-person and remote. This week we see that there's been wonderful experience gained as showed what the best practices are and innovation and what gaps are, in addition to the need to re-enable institutions that were impacted negatively by the pandemic. We established a timeline for safe return to in-person classes. Next slide, please, which begins on November 22nd. The students return to the technical baccalaureate, both in rural areas as well in the island area of Galapagos, where I'm located at the present time. Vaccinated students nationwide. In the next slide, please. Luis, the next slide, please. Oh, that was it. So I don't have it. Sorry. Go back a few, please. No, just leave it there. Thank you. Vaccinated students nationwide. Before this shared responsibility strategy came into effect, it was announced that on November 22nd, as I said, this coming Monday, we're going to begin in-person return of all technical baccalaureate, BT, and rural baccalaureates, and the baccalaureate programs on the Galapagos Islands. Also, as of December 6th, it's been announced that we're going to have a return to in-person class of 100% of all science and basic higher baccalaureate programs. This is part of the vaccination plan. And on January 17th, we are to have 100% in person of of elementary education and baccalaureate nationwide. This shared responsibility concept that I just cited, the education institutions in the post-pandemic era have different concerns. They have to feel this shared responsibility along with civil society. And so we launched Apadrina, or Sponsor a School. Sponsor a School. Apadrina una escuela. So this is for the sake of vaccinating all kids nationwide. We go back to the idea of vaccinating. We have young people who are 5 to 11 years old. Only 32% of this age group have been vaccinated with a first dose. Young people from 12 to 17 in school, there's 73.29%, while those who have had one dose, those who have had a second dose of that age group are 33%. That means that based to achieve the minimum intended by the Ministry of Health in each canton, we're looking to keep to the schedule that I showed before. In the next slide, when we talk about shared responsibility, I want to begin this with this phrase: from a draft to an idea. There's many different needs of kids in school. With a spirit of shared responsibility and with civil society, we launched this strategy to sponsor a school, to reactivate and improve and boost the quality of schools in Ecuador. Additionally, today we begin the National League Education League, where families, the community, students are turning to the authorities of education institutions to enter into basic arrangements like networks coordinating for cleaning the actual school buildings where all our young people will be returning to. To wrap up this idea, I want to underscore that the declaration of emergency in Ecuador brought about new pedagogical strategies to aid education in this context, a change in methodologies, different portfolios, self-evaluation, and a concept of evaluation beyond just regular tests and quizzes. So in this scenario, the role of teachers who are committed to their jobs has been fundamental. We have to recognize them. It's imperative that the government and society do so. So we are working on new teaching approaches to make curriculum more flexible and reflect the lessons and experience learned during the pandemic. We maintain the commitment to continue adopting educational technologies, and with the efforts of digital literacy for the entire society, the community, all together to move towards a digital society. We've experienced a lot over these last 2 years. However, we have shown resiliency and particularly a commitment to education and to upholding the right to education. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vice Minister. Despite the delay in us, it was definitely worth the wait. So thank you very much for that very interesting and insightful presentation. Do we have any delegations that wish to request the floor for comment? I'm not seeing any delegations at the moment. Once again, are there any delegations that wish to request the floor? Yes, I'm seeing the delegate from Colombia, I believe it is.
Correct.
Colombia, you have the floor.
Thank you very much once again. The truth is, I insist on participating because it's very important to continue to hold meetings such as this one. The Ecuador's presentation was wonderful, not only because it was so concrete, but it's a real inspiration. It shows what this whole country's been doing so that children and young people can get back to school. We fully share this view in Colombia, and we are engaged in similar efforts as well. And we've had significant achievements as well in that our students are now, almost 96% of our students at government education institutions are returning to in-person class. So when they say we're near 60% return, I think they're on the way. And there's nothing wasted of all their efforts. Everything is helping. We do this in Colombia too. So let's have the children have a children-centered, kid-centered approach, and let's uphold their right to quality education and show our commitment to this, because this is quite inspiring to hear what Ecuador has done. It makes us feel that we're doing the same thing and that we're doing the right thing, and we agree with and doing what the World Bank says that should be done, that children and adolescents have had quite a bit, have been impacted in their development, their socio-emotional development, particularly as a result of the lockdowns and other effects of the pandemic. So all of us as countries, we must continue to work on the basis that our students must get back to school and continue to experience what in-person learning is like and everything it contributes to ensuring quality education. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Argentina. Argentina, you have the floor.
Thank you. We're grateful for the figures, the strategies that have been shared by Colombia and Ecuador, and we join in to this effort that prompts us and drives us so that all children can get back to school in person. On October 1st in Argentina, we called for full in-person learning at all levels of education, with the university hybrid though, but included in-person for practicum and for internships. The Ministry of Education raised the need with the 24 jurisdictions of our country to recover lost time, get back lost time, and so we implemented on Saturday school, and we were working to set in motion summer schools where, in addition to learning language and math, we will include as well sports, art classes, well, those two subjects. Now, as regard to the time that it takes to recover that lost time, we've come up with infrastructure improvements and further equipping to put a million computers will be made available for secondary schools over the next time, textbooks for elementary school for kids, and literature for kindergarten and for first grade. So we, with regard to the infrastructure, as Ecuador says, and Colombia as well, in preparing these school houses to receive welcome kids back. There'll be more class hours and a greater commitment of our governments with regard to the inversion and the investment and the budget required so that all children can get back to in-person classes. So I'd like to tell you about a program that we're conducting in Argentina, our country. We have 1 million scholarships, tuition payments for 18 to 24-year-old students who are finishing up their compulsory education or are engaged in higher education. We have included this monthly scholarship payment that 1 million kids, extra connectivity so that they can continue to study. This scholarship was in effect during the entire pandemic. We will announce over the next days reinforcements and expansion of the program. We highly appreciate this meeting here, and I find it necessary that we continue to exchange strategies, see what works over the next months, which beyond all the strategies and everything, what each country does, we have to confront together a pandemic that we consider is not over yet. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Argentina. And I would love to commend you on those scholarships that you're offering, because access to education is paramount, and financial resources, or the lack of financial resources, ought not to be a barrier to those persons who have the ability and the desire to access educational institutions. So congratulations on that very exciting and positive initiative. Do we have any more delegations, any other delegations seeking the floor? I see none. And so, if just in wrapping up this particular part of our meeting today, I thought really that this was the most interesting part of the discussion so far today, particularly the two topics that we discussed after lunch. The thoughts on return to in-person education, an excellent presentation delivered by Ecuador, and also inclusive and equitable education by Colombia. Those two topics, I think, were very timely, and I believe that the delegates here in this meeting learned quite a bit. I certainly did. I found them tremendously interesting. So thank you to the two delegations that presented, and also thank you, Argentina, for that very wonderful intervention that you just made. It's well appreciated. We will now continue, if I could just bring my notes together. The next segment for our third plenary session, we'll continue with a panel to discuss towards building a hemispheric proposal with a multi-sectoral approach. And to that end, we are pleased to have with us today the contributions from representatives of the labor and health sectors. It is my pleasure to welcome Mrs. Marcela Galliano, coordinator of the Healthy Ways, Conditions, and Lifestyles Group of the Ministry of Health and Social Protection of Colombia, in the representation of the chair of the Directing Council of the Pan American Health Organization, PAHO, 2021. Colombia was president of the PAHO's Directing Council during the last year, the period in which took place the 3 intersectoral dialogues. In the coming months, we will continue to work with the Ministry of Health and Wellness of Jamaica, which replaced Colombia in this important role. Ms. Galliano, Chair, you have the floor. Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Chair, I apologize to interrupt. It seems that we don't have the Spanish interpretation. Could you give us a minute, please?
Sure. Sí.
Sí, la escuché en español. La escucho. Gracias. Gracias. Mr. Chair, I was listening to the Spanish audio and I could hear well now. So please continue.
Okay. So I will once again reintroduce our first presenter, Mrs. Marcela Galliano, who is the coordinator of the Healthy Ways, Conditions, and Lifestyles Group of the Ministry of Health and Social Protection of Colombia, in the representation of the chair of the Directing Council of the Pan American Health Organization 2021. Colombia was president of the PAHO's Directing Council during the last year, the period in which took place the 3 intersectoral dialogues. In the coming months, we will continue our work with the Ministry of Health and Wellness of Jamaica, who replaced Colombia in this important role. And so, Mrs. Galliano, welcome, and the floor is over to you.
Su micrófono, por favor.
Muy bueno. Good afternoon to all of you. For Colombia and for me, it is an enormous pleasure to be here with you. I am going to share my screen with you. You have to open it on your computer and you cannot manage it. Yes, perfect. Now please put it in presentation mode. Can you see it properly? Yes, but please put it in presentation mode. I have it in presentation mode. Okay, once again, good afternoon. And I said previously, I'm Marcela Galliano. I'm a psychiatrist. I am specialized in public health management, psychiatry, and I have of non-transmissible diseases. And we work with conditions, special conditions and chronic non-transmissible diseases. What we are working as a ministry, and we are strongly working in strategies that are working in CRS. So this strategy has allowed us to work jointly with other sectors in order to promote health. In this slide, I am going to show you what this strategy allows us to do. This is a tool that allows us to use these health determinants, and we can use to avoid transmissible diseases, to prevent tobacco consumption, the consumption of alcohol, and different type of factors, and we think of strategies that may harm populations. And we started preparing strategies that will allow us to use vectors that will allow us to stop and act on, not to promote not only on health, but different type of vectors and this incidence of factors to promote change and an improvement on the quality of life of the people. So it is a tool that is extremely important to implement. In accordance with this strategy, we use as the highest proposal, and that the territories think that it is not only the health problem, and that we have the management of resources, and that the resources that exist in the territory are not sufficient, and both in our work area, and that jointly you can take with a different type of health, education, work, sports, culture, so that you can go in towards the same type of results. The objectives, policies, participative policies, in order to jointly with social policies we can use without the participation of all the communities or all the actors, and strengthen our means. What do we look for to achieve with this strategy? We want to prevent the use of tobacco, because it is not enough to just prevent or apply high taxes. We have some measures of population and transformations. All of us have to work, all the different sectors have to work jointly in order to diminish the use of these factors. Today we are working with these strategies and the implementation. We understand that there are 5 different tools: the democratic, the economic part, social, environmental, and financial. We take all these matters to implement how they can be used in the population, in the territories, in real time, in a planning, articulated manners for the health matters in every single one of the territories. As a country, how do we implement this strategy? What we try to implement to visible results in the development plan throughout the territory in health matters, as well as the different type of departments. Another type of progress is to establish dialogue with the health plans. We not only talk with our different type of secretariats, but also with the mayors, governors, and other chiefs of different type of secretariats to make joint plans. What we are trying to achieve with this type of strategy in order to different type of territorial interventions to implement joint plans. In the intersectorial planning, we have a different type of models, and we have already noticed that when you have different type of plans and it is joint plans, it is much easier to have common means, and you can have these actions to the same populations, the strengthening of skills, and in these territories jointly with universities, schools, we have been able to manage, for example, a territory or universities with strategies. What we were able to do is in universities we have managed to have a course that have taught the students and trained them on different players that were key players in teaching the students of different type of preventive measures. A few teams or measures for these populations, and we have developed certain schemes where he made capacity building programs and technical schools and programs to the promotion of healthy programs, physical programs, prevention of tobacco use and other type of non-transmissible disease. All this has helped this at the national level with some technical programs and special school nutritional programs at the national level. The different type of departments have helped us with technical programs and education in order to teach and different type of strategies for healthy lifestyles. We were also able to work with in the same system. We were able to have a strategy fully aligned with other initiatives for healthy nutrition and personal hygiene.
Do we have a technical problem?
I believe so. It sounds like it's connectivity because first her video froze and then her audio went out.
Yes, the technical bugs are eating us after lunch. Let me just wait a few more seconds to see if she's able to get back online. If not, we may need to go to our next speaker and then revert to Ms. Galliano. I think, yes. Can you confirm whether our next speaker is in the room? Mrs. Edith Bike. Is she in the meeting?
Consultamos si la señora Vic puede pedir la palabra.
Vic can request the floor. Yes, she's already requesting it.
As we were just discussing, the technical issues have been plaguing us this afternoon, but in the interest of expedience, I would like to invite Mrs. Edith Bick, the National Director of Continuous Training of the Ministry of Labor, Employment and Social Security of Argentina, in the representation of the Chair of the Inter-American Conference of Ministers of Labor. Director, thank you for accommodating us in such short notice. It is much appreciated, and the floor is yours.
Estoy con audio. Sí. Bueno, buenas tardes.
Good afternoon. Esteemed Chair, Honorable Darrell Matthew, and it is an honor for me and for the Ministry of Labor in the exercise of the chair of the Inter-American of Ministers of Labor to be able to be working on this intersectorial meeting. We believe that it is important to be here, and we thank the invitation received. As you said, Minister Matthew, in the Inter-American Ministers of Labor, the COVID-19 pandemic, economic and labor and education and sanitary demands multi-sectorial cooperation. We have gone through a very important path in the OAS since 2013 that has been consolidated in the meetings of the Ministers of Labor and Education, and the labor in the cooperation between education and labor, as well as the contributions of education and labor, and that have been in December of 16 and in Santiago in Chile of 2019 with a joint participation of employees or civil servants of our ministries. And we have the experience of COVID and all the challenges that we have had, as well as all the lessons learned and the recommendations to strengthen the work between the Ministries of Education and Labor. Nevertheless, the conditions of labor, education and economy demands more commitments from us, and that is why the action plan of Buenos Aires, the Ministers of Labor of the Americas, undertook the commitment of strengthening the preparations of the world of labor and the formation of labor through public commitments of the coordinations among our systems of capacity building, emphasizing the technical formations for work. Furthermore, they reaffirmed the information and their interest of qualifications, and they said of the OAS, UNESCO and other entities to continue working in this regard. It is important to say that the administration of labor and cooperation between the Ministry of Labor that finance jointly with UNESCO and important, and that we will be working to take a framework of qualification for the Americas. Furthermore, they also took the development of strategies that will continue strengthening this and the education capacity building for the youngsters, especially so that they will be able in more vulnerability with the different type of problems like the young women and with the disabilities and those that are non-voluntarily neither work nor study. As it is obviously true, the education is essential to the agenda for 2030 and for the sustainable development for in the framework of dialogue between the Ministers of Labor and Education, the 2021 agenda of 2021 of Buenos Aires of decent work and as well as the sectorial of 2006, all the social development of labor and technology, as well as all the development that it had, and the quality of employment and inclusion, and the challenge that it represents of all the institutions of the working world, as well as the articulation of education and employment, especially the professional employment that will allow the laborers to face this transformation in the world of labor. Under this framework, it was said that they have to have the different that we want to say as the area of our collaboration. The learning, continuous labor, preparation as well as the productive manner, the methodology to the development of skills for the future, that we have to have the analysis and the experience of joint and the ministry of ours, as well as the public and private things, and the development of skills, the development of a framework of qualifications to have the skills and the development of the abilities. This to continue working, and the alliance and the technical and UNESCO, the management and generation of information that will mirror and will be important for the different processes with education and work, the strengthening and the upgrading and widening of all the qualification and skills of employment, and the dialogue and organize in order to have informations, the prevention and eradication of child labor, and the information and transition between this. In this is important to show the agreements between the Ministries of Labor and Education that under the framework develops the possibility of throughout the time. And furthermore, it is important to also know that the concept of this and despite which we could have a formation pertinent to the eradication of the workers of both gender for the digital strategies and the implementation of an importance of this. This way, it is also important for the evidences of the polities that did not have access to this professional learning, to the interaction for the stages of labor in the spaces. Furthermore, in this interaction and within the agenda that we mentioned before, the actions that the laborers and both genders could implement, the strategies to implement in the labor formal market, as well as establish which are the possibilities to improve the skills that they have. I would not like to stop mentioning that there are mandates of the first conference of the Ministries of Labor, the commitment of continuing strengthening the institutional ranks and to work towards the measures and protocols and rules that are for the sanitary and the development on rules for this work, and the health and security of work, of our preventive measures and the organizations of the sanitary, and to develop and implement with the official dialogue strategies that are going to depend the health of the laborers. To finish, I would like to thank once again the Inter-American of the Technical Secretariat of the OAS, and I would like to once again to take the Claudio Moroni said during his words in the Ministries of Labor during the need of two norms and educations to reach the sustainable development, the equity and inclusion, that we need a development process centered on people, symbols of transformation, policies and cultural needs, the problems of social development, and the education and labor services. And that is why the intersectorial duty with a collaborative way, and the Ministries of Education and Labor even more, this cannot be of an option. This demands us to have a commitment. Thank you very much.
Your participation and your presence here is a clear demonstration of the intersectoral relationship that exists between Ministries of Labor, Education, and of course, Health. Is Ms. Galliano, was she able to rejoin the meeting?
I know, Mr. President, that she has been trying, but I don't have her in the list. They are telling me that she's connected. Miss Galeano, ¿pudiera solicitar la palabra?
Ms. Galeano, could you request the floor?
Making the request.
No.
I think you're muted.
Sorry, President. I believe that we can proceed with the dialogue among the Ministries of Education and the Ministry of Labor that it is here represented.
Absolutely. Colleagues, the floor is open for any intervention, any comments that you'd like to make as we wind down today's sessions. I believe we had some very interesting presentations, particularly the last presentation from Director Bick. Is there any delegation who would like the floor at this point in time? I see Ms. Galliano has requested the floor. So I would like to, at this point in time, give her the opportunity to complete her presentation. So Ms. Galliano, if you're with us, welcome back, and the floor is yours to continue your presentation.
Ms. Galliano, would you like me to put the presentation up? Yeah, you were on slide 5. I can't remember where it went out, but I remember. Yes, it's a mystery here. There's a lot of security-based restrictions here, so I apologize, but if you put me back to where I was, I'll pick it up. I'll pick it up right there, okay? So on this, on which slide? What did I leave off on this slide? She's asking.
Bueno, como,
So we've been working on different intersectoral coordination. One was with the Ministry of Education and UNICEF, where we create a tool, which you can find the link on this slide for, where this was for the Healthy Schools Initiative and to help the education community. This strategy has reached out to 8 territories. They're listed up here, Chocó, La Guajira, etc. They're listed in the middle item. This has been run by the Ministry of Education, and we, as the Ministry of Health, we work with it on this toolbox so that the hygiene practices, healthy practices, and exercise, etc., and nourishment it extends to other parts of the nation. Next, with regard to the promotion of physical activity nationwide, the SIRS strategy that I brought up before, and under this strategy, we worked on a territorial basis. Nationally speaking, we are coordinated, but we're mostly focused on the territories. That is the more outlying areas, and very focused on the health aspect. But with regard to physical education, physical activity, the World Health Organization has teamed with us to deal with the economic side of health, so that use of bicycle riding can help promote physical activity, but this is a strategy for people to walk and use their own power to get to work and to school by bicycle, and also promoting walks. And these are different strategies that are mixed together with the economic side. Are you hearing me? Wonders the speaker. Yes, fine. Another process we have in place for physical activity is for individual healthy routes to good health in our sector, with a tool, a document that is, that we have drafted, so that there's some tips, messages, or advice for physical activity and for individual care, health care. And we're always stressing the idea of physical activity from the youngest age to the oldest age, to use this as a way of preventing disease and to improve the standard of living of people. We worked on this nationwide together with the Ministry of Education, the Office of the President, and what we've been successful at is to hold courses to work on healthy lifestyles. This is focusing particular populations, 16-year-old range, teenagers, for example, is one of the target populations. And the Ministry of Sport has also been involved. We've trained in the territories, the outlying areas, both in school settings as well as community settings, to learn to go in to engage with people, with children, not only just a half hour of physical education or physical activity, but rather to provide healthy lifestyles, promotion, outreach together to our major achievements in our healthy lifestyle strategy is that our country is divided up into 32 departments and 5 districts. These departments and districts, 81% of the departments recognize this strategy, and they're used in different settings to sensitize people with regard. 75% have, to some degree, have implemented this strategy. They're trying to replicate it. They're trying to learn more about it to further implement it. In Colombia, there's 1,000 some odd municipalities exist, of which 309 have been awareness has been raised about the strategy in these municipalities, and 63 commitment agreements to implement the strategy have been signed. We've been successful at this. This is another achievement. And so these commitments are signed by mayors or governors so that their entity lead a healthy lifestyle. And 60% of these entities have been committed to that have committed have shown some degree of progress in this regard. Currently, as the ministry, we've created a tool that shows here you can see the link at the bottom, which will take you to the tool. What this tool does is we condense indicators of different progress and situations of different municipalities of Colombia, so that in real time people can see the current situation. Let me share. I will share the presentation for you so that you can click and obviously get a good idea with how we follow up in each of the territories to see how our efforts are progressing. This is also for mayors and governors to be monitoring their own jurisdictions with regard to different indicators, not only health, but like work absence, school absences, potable water, vaccinations, all sorts of things can be monitored using this tool. We are loading information into this tool so that different indicators can be seen. Not only the healthy lifestyles strategy related things, but also vaccination, but also looking at parks, finding parks to be able to engage in physical activity. We see more and more indicators that we can use to and collect real-time data. It's very useful. Now, to wrap up, in the outlying territories, we stress that to have a healthy setting, a healthy municipality, there has to be a situation analysis of health conducted, and to learn determine what their priorities are, to figure out in each one of the different sectors how they stand. So the first thing we stress with the different territories to engage in this prioritization exercise, both monitoring and follow up and social participation, so that this makes the strategy viable by doing this. So remember, infrastructure, sports, culture, etc., and as well as the resources that are available to these sectors. It's not just about it's not that there's extra resources are going to be available, but for each sector to be able to all together, the different ones, to meet the goals. So they're all linked to planning. We have different planning tools for the different territories in Colombia. So what we seek to do is that this should be written into the planning instruments, because this goes hand in hand with resources. If it's not in the planning instruments, then it's going to be very difficult to carry out these objectives, these actions, and reach these goals. So often, many sectors and many cities and municipalities, what they do is they conduct actions, but they don't show any results because they don't do monitoring and following up. So we provide training to the territories so that they learn about different tools that they can use to see where they're at, to see what programs they're making, to monitor and follow up on their actions that they have taken. And then social participation is sine qua non. If condition or nothing will work. So we have many indigenous and Afro-descendant communities, and so we need to take all this into account in planning and implementing the strategy. So one of the we have several key interventions like social reunification through cultural activities and sports, and also rebuilding the social fabric, infrastructure for physical activity, promote active transportation, supply of healthy food, school stores, implementation of the promotion of health maintenance routes, and strengthening our APS approach. We have communities in Colombia that are days away by canoe, the only way to get to them. So the intent is not for these communities go to the services, but rather the services have to go to the communities. to have like primary care, health care. So these are the tools that we use in the territories, key interventions, we believe, and we've engaged in these exercises. We have been implementing all of this, and we have the results to show this. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer if I am able to answer your question.
Thank you very much, Ms. Galliano, and we thank you for your resilience and your patience in overcoming the technical issues to deliver what is a very informative presentation. I open the floor to delegates who may wish to have an intervention. Do we have anyone wishing to comment on either of the two presentations that we heard this afternoon for our intersectoral colleagues from the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Labor? Do we have any delegate that wishes to comment? I see Peru seeking the floor. Peru, please proceed.
The volume is too low. Her volume is way too low, and the interpreter can't interpret. It's still too low for the interpretation. I had a question for Ms. Galliano. I wanted to make a comment as well. Currently, for Latin American countries, it's been very complicated to be engaged in this intersectoral effort, and often it's much more difficult to just bring it down to a territory. So has it been put on the, you've brought up an important aspect, which is to intervene at the level of the different territories, so all of the members and sectors take part, or with smaller cities and smaller level, small scale implementation. The question I had is whether this initiative goes hand in hand with any information management or interoperability effort from the Ministry of Health or Education, so that the municipality could also have access or have better traceability of their actions in each territory. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to respond?
Can you hear me? Yes, because I wonder if there's connection problems, but I totally agree with our Peruvian colleague. However, we must recognize that it's been easier to coordinate at the territorial level than at the national level, because at the territorial level, we're talking to the head of the government. We're not just talking to a sector of the government as we do at the national level, but rather at the territorial level, we tell a mayor, who is the actual head of the city, the municipality, we tell them, you have to work with each and every one of your different sectors. And that's how we've been successful. I say at the national level, nationwide, it's been tough to coordinate, as I showed you in the presentation, with a few sectors like sports and education, but these are efforts that are sort of very specific. We haven't been able to explain this in a document, for example, but after COVID, we came hit hard. We started to put together a document so that over the next 5 or 6 years, one of the lines of work will be the process of coordination, a plan for coordinating with regard to healthy lifestyles, and this will play an important role nationwide. And so this will be the opportunity to spread this nationwide. And so this will be the instrument to help for nationwide planning, and we hope to because it's not easy to coordinate, as our Peruvian colleague just said, but we hope that this instrument be the tool that makes it possible for us to coordinate. Because what we see often is we meet, but everybody works on their own, and we don't really work in a coordinated fashion. So, as I said, in the territories, on the other hand, is to go right to the head, the political head of the territory, and that's why we've been successful. That's the way it is.
Thank you so much, Ms. Galliano. I see Colombia requesting the floor. Colombia, please proceed.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted to reinforce what has been presented by the Ministry of Health of Colombia with regard to these initiatives, but specifically after the remarks from Peru, I'd like to remark that we see that we need to have these peer-to-peer dialogue spaces continue, and that we can work in a coordinated fashion in these processes. For 2020, 2021, there was support. We hand in hand with PAHO, as the director mentioned in the first session, we were able to take part, as our colleague from the Ministry of Health has mentioned. We were able to share at the different ministries of education in these initiatives and share everything about everything we've been doing. So the message is, this isn't only about resources, but it's also method, procedure. And so the Inter-American Committee on Education has made it possible for us to create. The committee has been an important coordinator, and to help us fulfill these commitments and mandates with this work plan, which is very timely and relevant, designed jointly among all of the countries who participated in the 2019-2022 plan. So I just wanted to reinforce this need and to continue to share our experiences and thus state how important it is and how relevant this issue is. And other sub-issues that break off from there is this healthy lifestyles. We at the Ministry of Education, we have a commitment under our work plan, the work plan of the Inter-American Committee, to share our experiences and work. We work together with UNICEF on a toolbox that could be of use to other countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Colombia. Do we have any other delegations seeking to make a contribution to today's discussion? I see none. And if that is the case, I would just like, sorry, yes?
Presidente, si me permite hacer un comentario. Antes que nada, a los ministerios de educación, a usted, pedirle.
If you allow me to make a comment, ministries of education and everything, we apologize for all the problems which are outside the OAS. But remember, the labor sector, I want to say, is that the government of Colombia has put us on the table, both in its Ministry of Education and Health, to interconnect strategies, not only nationwide, but at the hemispheric level as well, which is what we are aspiring to. I just want to bring something up from the Ministry of Labor of Argentina, bring something up that was mentioned in that presentation by Argentina. The meeting of ministers of labor last September, the ministers of labor made the decision to continue working with the ministries of education in very specific things. For example, lifelong learning and productivity and greater access to connectivity and digital technologies, the development of digital skills and transferable skills, etc. So I just want to mention that we have taken note as technical secretariat of these processes, and the special guests that are listening to us and I'm looking at the list, and those have been with us here. This list, who are partners of the organization and of the ministries, to please take note of these requests so that as technical secretariat we can provide very specific products, outputs, concrete activities to help strengthen all these requests of ministries of labor, health, and education. Chair, I just didn't want to let this go by without mentioning my urging to do that. We're going to have a little more dialogue. We didn't do this, but we'll take note of all the comments that were made both by the Ministries of Labor and Health, and we will continue to address these issues at the Inter-American Committee on Education. Thank you very much, Chair.
Useful comment and intervention. You know, my own feelings as it relates to intersectoral dialogue is they surround the principle that issues that affect us all cannot be solved individually. And so the more dialogue that we can have between correlated sectors, the better it is for us all. And so I'm quite pleased, I was quite happy to have had the opportunity to present at the Ministers of Labor meeting a few months ago. And I'm quite happy to have our friends and colleagues from the Ministries of Health and Labor join us in this discussion here today. Your intervention and your presentations were very insightful, very useful, and very timely. And so thank you once again. Colleagues, we have come to the end of today's agenda. I think we had a very interesting day, a very tightly run day. I'm happy that we all adhered to the timelines, but I do not believe that we lost any content by being on time. I believe all the presentations today were spot on. They were very insightful and useful and should give us a lot to reflect on as we prepare for tomorrow's continuation of this meeting. I propose, therefore, that the Inter-American Council for Integral Development take note of the presentations and the comments of our guests today and have them so recorded. And if there are no objections, it is so decided. Like I said, we have completed today's proceedings. Unless there are any very pressing comments that anyone would like to make, the proposal is that we close now and we adjourn tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Washington time. I see no hands up for commentary. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time today. Thank you for all of the work that you did today. And please have a good evening.
Thank you, Minister.
Señor director, cierro.
Sí, estaba esperando nada más al ministro. Luis, muchas gracias por el apoyo. Mañana nos vemos temprano. Le recuerdo a las misiones que todavía están conectadas que es un nuevo link el que usaremos el día de mañana. Les reitero la puntualidad. Se aprecia mucho. Tenemos que revisar quórum antes de poder iniciar la sesión. Y como vieron, nuestro ministro, nuestro presidente es muy puntual para iniciar las sesiones, entonces los espero a todos el día de mañana temprano, 9 de la mañana. Entiendo, Luis, Gloria, que va a estar abierto una hora antes para quien quiera realizar pruebas de conexión, poderlas hacer.
Le doy la palabra a Gloria, efectivamente, una hora antes, pero gracias. Está entrando Gloria.
Sí, señor, una hora antes.
Perfecto, pues les agradezco a todos su apoyo y nos vemos mañana.
Con mucho gusto. Bueno, gracias. Muy amable, director. Cerramos sala, Luis, gracias.
Ok.